This is AV SuperFriends Off the Rails, an almost regularly scheduled open discussion on audio and video in higher education. We'll sound off about our most brilliant ideas, our dumbest mistakes, and everything in between. And because this conversation will almost certainly go off the rails at some point, we'll end up covering just about everything else. And now, the AV SuperFriends. For October 18th, 2023, it's the best-sounding podcast in higher ed AV. This is the AV SuperFriends. Broadcasting live to tape from coast to coast, easternmost to westernmost, northernmost to southernmost, gate post to hitching post. I'm your local host who can boast the most milquetoast and utmost humility. I'm Chris Decter, and it's time for another Friday afternoon podcast adventure. Except it's Wednesday, and you can blame Mark for that, who is now not here, oddly enough. So let's say hello to today's panel of AV SuperFriends. Today I'm joined by a legacy accountability architect from Kansas City, Jamie Reinhart, an international implementation representative from Greensboro, North Carolina, Larry Darling, a central paradigm coordinator from Bowling Green, Kentucky, Justin Rexing, and a very special guest, a global infrastructure orchestrator from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Richard Mitchell. Hello, everybody. How's Wednesday for you?
Very Wednesday-ish.
It's Wednesday.
Fantastic.
On today's call, we're going to discuss AI in AV and cleaning up after others. But first, let's do the news. And today's news comes from Richard. He brings the news. Our news is about Biamp and some weird AI stuff. Link is in the show notes. But we figured since this was an interesting announcement, we'd have Richard on to talk about it and then to hang out for the show. So Biamp announced that they have a new AI noise reduction block for their software. So now we're leveraging smarty pants computers to make our audio sound better. Did I summarize that correctly?
Kind of. I would say this is not a new thing for Biamp. We've been doing it for about 2 years, but I will say it is new in our open architecture. So the AI noise reduction was in our soundbar, and we wanted to walk before we ran, and it was in the soundbar, kind of a closed ecosystem, and then we introduced it into the Tessera Forte X with launch earlier this year, late last year, and now we have introduced it into the Tessera Forte X line with our open architecture. So now it is a block that you place into your design, whatever it may be, and it will eliminate a lot of dynamic sound that is not desirable outside of band. Voice band audio is just kind of removed, and we've also added in some kind of control as to how aggressive or not so aggressive it is. So it is approximately 3 weeks old, and we are, as a person, part of the enterprise team, still kind of getting our understanding of where it's going to fit. But we are currently beta testing it in a couple of university classrooms where we're doing A to B testing into lecture capture systems to get a sense for how's it going to work, how is it going to eliminate sounds? And one of the big things is that dynamic sound, like doors slamming, people eating food, crinkling, those kind of noises is somewhat eliminated from that. It's new to the open architecture, but not necessarily new to Biamp.
So this is technology that's been has this general technology been part of launch since that came out several years ago? Have the elements of this been included in that? And is this some of the secret sauce that launch is doing?
It was not included with launch originally. So it was something that was brought into launch, again, approximately 2 years. Launch is about 4 years old. And so it's just we're able to leverage the processor in the DSP in a new way. In fact, the AI block is very processor intensive. So we are tempering people's expectations of like, oh, I'm going to put this on every channel. And no. You get one block with our DSP, and whatever audio you filter through there will filter specifically for human voice. So And I am happy to dispel the AI. There is not a sentient being in your DSP system. I am also happy to dispel the reality of machine learning versus AI, and I would prefer to leave that to an AI expert. But I have a good sense of how we did it. The person tasked in Beaverton, Oregon, with this project, it started about 4 years ago on this project, and the first iteration came out about 2 years ago. And there is an AI that we have developed in-house on a supercomputer that we lease time on, and it has generated a kind of a thumbprint, if you will, that then we can apply to our DSPs that use a much more modest processor on it. And that is how, yes, is it an AI on the device? Maybe, probably not. Is it an AI-derived filter? Absolutely.
So what you're saying is all of our Biamp products are going to rise up and kill us all.
So already we have profiled all of you, and we know everything about you at this point. And that's where we are.
We will be muted and destroyed.
When are you shipping those DSPs with the supercomputer built in?
As the moment that you have about 12 kilowatts is what the supercomputer needs.
We have that in Kentucky, no problem.
Fantastic. Just plug it directly into the grid, you'll be fine.
And right now, this is only on the Forte X. You can't get this on the server appliances or...
No. So we've got a lot of people that have large server installations, and what they're going to probably do is sidecar it with a Tessera Forte X400 and get, in and out over AVB. You could also in and out over Dante if you wanted to, depending upon your configuration. Or
only two channels.
Can you do analog?
Can I show you guys my room with four? You've all seen the photo, the room of 4 DSPs that is using analog loopouts for outboard processing because people don't understand general engineering.
Because why get rid of anything ever?
You should just add one of those Fortes to it, just on top, and make it 5 DSPs, Chris. Just go ahead and do it.
But there are a couple of videos I would be happy to share with y'all, but it does this thing. It's specific to dynamic sound, which is, incredibly hard to get rid of without like a live mixing person trying to listen for it. But it does an amazingly good job for what it was intended to do. And just within the last month, I've had 2 universities reach out saying, we've got, the dean was in a room and a student opened up a package with plastic on the outside of it and it ruined the session. Would that AI have solved that? I'm quick to say maybe. It very well could have. It depends upon.
But we frown upon laser-guided missiles in a classroom.
Right. Or, eliminating students is not something we would recommend. But, the voice filter does give you a much better chance of capture or filtering out some of those noises that you just would have had in those recordings. And people are quick to say like, oh, well, Zoom and Teams will do this. But in your lecture capture that you're doing remotely, you can avoid sending things into the cloud. This is a on-prem device that does a very specific thing. And if you've already bought one of our Tessera Forte X's, it's a free thing that you just added into your DSP.
Here's something you all can work on. So we've had some interesting requests lately where we have events or situations that are clapping. And we get complaints when you can't hear the clapping because it's intentional and everybody's standing up. I'm not shitting you, Chris. I am not shitting. So we had to go in. We've had to kind of figure out like where the hell is that at, and we've had to enable it. So
fix it.
We need your filter to go in and do drop boxes and like enable the clapping. I want to enable the cat's meow. I want to hear that cat meow.
Mowing, yes. Lawn crew, no.
Exactly. No lawn crews, no weed eaters, but yes, birds hitting windows, and yes, sneezing, and yes, packages opening, and yes, clapping. Because I want the experience as if I was in the room. Whatever happened to that, y'all? Like
to that point,
we're trying to replicate the experience in the room.
the block is there is how aggressive do you want this to be, so you can get some of that.
The
clapping
is
may be a little
package opening versus clapping versus.
It's more like a good, better, best kind of thing.
Yeah,
again, those are the I think those are the things that we're still in seeing the outcomes of how this filter will be utilized in more complex designs. But because again, 3 weeks ago we didn't have it.
Pass along my AI request to your AI bots and let those AI bots know that we need to advance this to the next stage.
Clapping, yes, got it.
Like filtering out what we want on noise and what we don't want. Seems easy to me. But.
When we first heard about this, it was really intriguing because it does solve one of the biggest problems, right? Well, not clapping? Solve is a little over the top here. It may help contribute into the lessening of problems. But, Yeti cups on the table, coughs, door slams for people going in and out to the bathroom that are distracting because you can't see them. Only the AVSF official Yeti cup. But
I want to hear that filter. Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. Maybe it helps get rid of some of those sharp dynamics, because that is one of the biggest complaints I've had in some of these classes where this is a very active room, the one word answers. But I got to be honest, I'm a little dubious because we've kind of heard things like this before in products called like feedback destroyer. We'll find the frequency that's feeding back and we'll just notch that shit out. And then the other one and the other one and the other one. The next thing you know, you have a POTS telephone. So I haven't used it, right? But have you heard that? I'm a little dubious because sometimes it can get a little overboard.
Oh, absolutely. Like if you, I have heard don't worry, this will get rid of all the ills of your audio solution. And it's just one bottle of our elixir will make this happen. No, I think you've got to go into it with a tempered approach because the reality is you're going to get those bits of feedback like, we can't hear the clapping now. And it's like, yeah,
it's a problem.
You asked us to get rid of the clapping.
You asked us to get rid of noise. Clapping isn't noise, or is it noise?
We want to get rid of the clap, not the clapping.
That's penicillin. Penicillin.
That's a different show, Larry.
Penicillin. Show. Not that I would know, but penicillin.
But now that I'm on the manufacturer side, I will say, it must be incredibly frustrating to be an engineer in this industry where it's like, just give us this one thing so that we can clearly hear human voice. And then they go, well, here you go. Here's a filter that will do that thing that you've requested. And then the moment any of our products have been released, immediately this is great, but, and all of a sudden there's 12 little gotchas along the way. And I can appreciate that. But I think legitimately, I have heard the filter on our soundbar. I have now played around a bit with the filter in my home kit, my test environment. And I'm fascinated to see how it works in the real world, A to B comparison in a classroom environment where it should function the way that I think it should. And the great thing is it's an open architecture from us. You're not locked into anything. You can put that block wherever you want. You can enable or disable that block from your touch panel. You will be able. It is a much more exciting thing now. But I think anyone at Biamp that is telling you that this is the magic elixir that you have always needed is selling you something. And I think honestly we are trying to show that we have a new technology that is, I think, pretty exciting because I was there in the classrooms when it get rid of that eating sound. I can hear them eating. I can hear the laptop clickety clack or somebody's got a pen and they're clicking it. And it does take the edge off that. When you start talking about like audio fatigue, when you're listening to a 1-2 hour long classroom, I can hear your clicking, Chris. I can hear that. But if we can reduce that fatigue by even 40%, that is moving the needle in a significant way, in my opinion.
And that impacts learning outcomes. I mean, there's research that says that cognitive load is a thing in classes, especially online classes.
And I know for a fact that we will have a lot of people that are like, it doesn't sound but we're dealing with many, many installations that don't sound good without this filter. Yes. Adding this filter will not fix a terrible mic setup or a terrible design.
Are you guys going to add a block that is just called physics? And you just uncheck it?
Magic. Pure just magic. Or the physics reducer. But again, hopefully I am being forthcoming and just open and honest that this will not eliminate, this will just create new problems for us down the road.
Well, I was about to go there because be careful what you ask for, and this is not bashing Biamp. This is just bashing the magic auto buttons out there on these cameras and mics.
I was going to bring up the auto button.
He's really against auto
speaking
buttons.
Of, no, this is a little different. So this is direct feedback from clients, similar to the audio thing where, hey, we want the clapping. The audio's too good. You're filtering too much out. Bring back some of the BS. We had that same complaint about your camera. Hey, Justin, we've been using this conference room, and can you turn this auto magic stuff off? We're getting complaints from the C-level people that the camera's too good now. Yeah, sure, we could do that. And like, are we going to start experiencing like we're actually giving people what they want, and they realize they're not really asking the right questions or telling us the right information?
I think this is also like we've been in that experience where, we swapped out one type of mic, the old analog mics for digital mics. And all of a sudden the faculty are saying, we don't I can hear too many of the conversations.
Too good.
And now we're running into a new,
hear the students in the back. Yeah.
I think that's the interesting thing here is because you're right on. And I cut you off, but
but I'm going to keep talking.
We got requested again and again and again. Well, I want an even sound field where I can hear everybody, and it's just like we're in the room, and it's a conversation. And we did it, and now the evolution is okay. Yeah, but can you go ahead and smartly, intelligently take out everything that we don't want to hear, and and then make everything we want to hear better. It's really an interesting evolution in how the products come, and our workarounds to give, to Justin's point, people what they want.
What they think they want versus what they actually need, right? And that's the question. And when you're doing needs analysis, people are going to think about, and you're not going to ask these questions like, do you want to hear clapping? Do you want to hear presence opening? Do you want to hear voices? What do you want to hear exactly? We're not going to go through that. It's kind of, you throw the shit out there and then you wait for feedback, and you get some feedback and like, oh, that's really surprising. Let me see if I can change that. I don't know.
But I'm excited because I think there's also opportunity. Like, why do you have to choose? Why can't you have a feed of audio that is raw from the room in whichever configuration you have, and then have an audio feed that you can select that has an AI voice?
But that's the problem. That's why I have rooms with 4 DSPs, because I want different levels of processing.
We are not mature enough to have raw feeds. We all know that.
I think what's happening
is it's good. I've got good, better, best, and raw, and that's what I've got there.
And no, we know on college campuses, protection is the highest order.
Yeah, all this AI stuff is actually, in some people's eyes, too good, and so the manufacturers are jumping ahead and making all this auto magic stuff, and we really want something in between. Like, we want to hear clapping, but we don't want to hear farting, right? Like, give me something.
Yeah, how smart is your AI, Richard?
Exactly.
Well, I feel like it might not be as smart as it was just 5 minutes ago now after this conversation.
We're going to challenge you,
Justin
Richard.
has some very specific requirements for AI.
It's wild.
I'm taking wild notes here.
It's called the hey, you figure it out.
Again, I think it's one of those, we have been asking for this thing. I'm using the we in past tense, and now a manufacturer has come out with a thing that checks a lot of the boxes, in my opinion. And I'm super excited about where this is headed, because this is the first foray into an open architecture where you can just drop a block in, dial it in a little bit, and it should improve significantly the types of sound that are coming through if you're in an academic environment where primarily it's talking. It's human voice. Like, again, I would not put this in a concert venue where you have music playing. That's not what this is intended for. This is specifically tuned into what Biamp does well.
I can hear the flute and Sarah singing in the back, right? I can't hear any drums.
But that dynamic HVAC sound that, you can't EQ that out. There's no, again, we kind of joked like, oh, sure, you can make it sound like a tin can and wow, all the audio's out. That's easy. But having that rich sound, and then when a door slams or the HVAC kicks on at 100% for 5 seconds, it eliminates a lot of that. And it's what we've been asking for.
Well, I want to put a pin in this conversation. We'll take a break. We're going to talk about AI in the larger context of in AV and how that might be applied. But I do want to make my quick request as you guys are working on blocks and as you're drawing from the technologies to do the automagic stuff and kind of giving us a little more control over some of those things, but still providing some of the magic there. I would like to request that we get a block named Sparkle for that extra voice effect, and my personal preference, the Big Bottom block. So if you could get that in there, so that
you name your DSP blocks like I name my dogs.
Pretty sure that
just saying
you're gonna have to find a new name for Big Bottom.
Just because it's a well-known patented radio block, I'd still want that everywhere. So. All right,
junk in the trunk. There you go, the junk in the trunk block. Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We're going to talk about the larger applications of AI in AV and how it might get used or might not get used. We'll be back after I push this button.
As many of you know, the Super Friends have always been better received when we have more input from you. So, here's your chance. Send us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and get involved with the show. We're looking for some topics to discuss, some fellow nerds to talk to, or just general AV awesomeness to brag about. But remember, we'll probably steal your ideas. And I suppose we'd take some criticism, but that wouldn't be very nice. Anyway, drop us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and find out how quickly we ask you to join this nonsense.
All right. So AI and AV, this is everywhere. Everything has AI in it now. And Richard, you did mention early on the difference between like large language models, natural language processing, etc., versus true Skynet. It's going to kill everybody AI, even though it was much as like Northrop and General Dynamics keep trying to put it into missiles, which just sounds like a great idea. How do we see realistically, how do we see some of these AI, quote unquote, the accepted term AI technologies, the automagic technologies in actual AV applications, real world, this makes sense. Hey, this improved things significantly. Applications. I guess that's where I'd like to keep the conversation rather than we go all far afield with ChatGPT and people cheating on tests.
Oh, they're doing that?
Possibly.
Yes.
Okay.
Shocked. I'm clutching my pearls.
Students
who would
cheating?
think of doing that?
So, Chris, do you consider lecture capture to be within the realm of AV? Like, because that's...
I thought you were within the realm of AI. I'm like, no, but...
Because that's where
I'm
I
curious,
see the...
where you headed?
Are you eliminating claps and farts? Because if so, Justin's interested.
I'm just saying that there are aspects of the lecture capture system that could be dramatically improved for the students with AI. First thing is just the post-production, like let's clean up the audio, let's clean up some of the pauses, let's shorten them down. That's an easy one. Film studios, different groups are already using AI to do that. The second part is a thing that I've seen other manufacturers play with some. Microsoft is a company we bring up a lot, but they're actually using AI to write meeting notes. It would be an easy leap to say that they tie that into their LMS, and now they're doing class notes that are now searchable by the students. And if they need to find out about a certain topic, they can search and it'll pull up clips from that class.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's doable today. So yes. Okay. So to your question, yes, I would say that some sort of semi or mostly automated, live transcription, or even if it's post-recording transcription that becomes searchable and linkable and all that, I guess you could brand that under the we're now AI enabled, and someone's going to do it. So whether it's Microsoft, Panopto, Zoom, someone, because I saw Zoom has a thing that popped up. It's like, we've got the AI assistant that will selectively mute people who are dumb. It's just, I assume that's what it's doing. I didn't actually read it.
Poor Richard will never
AI.
get a word in.
Why did my I just got muted, so
Yeah. The true AI comes where I think I just explained it earlier before the commercial is, you all create this block, and then when we can retrain the block to relearn itself by saying, hey, that clapping, don't ignore that. Keep that clapping in. But this other thing over here, ignore that. And as it learns new sounds over time,
is that like a reverse notch
block.
filter? Listen to the sound and make sure you hear it.
And so that's more of the active AI that I think we're missing, that is yet to be developed, is the learning part of this whole thing.
The processing necessary to execute on that is absolutely significant. And nobody's going to buy a sound bar that's $50,000 or $100,000. I mean,
that just tells you how far we are away from real AI, but it's coming.
It very well could be. But I think we're talking about kind of two things, like the AV industry and then like AI technology within the AV industry. And I think today you could do those things. I mean, honestly, Zoom is doing that right now with voice filtering and doing all these things. But the difficulty is it has to go up into the cloud, the magic cloud. And that's where our offering is kind of unique, where it's an on-prem version. But these filters will just continue to get better and better and better. We've seen the filter that we've come up with has matured over time. The first one at InfoComm, not this past year, but the year before, we were demoing, what this filter was. And there were hiccups and glitches and little sounds that would sneak on through. And it was not 100%. It wasn't shipping at the time, but, and it has... Every time it takes about 2 weeks for the filter to come up, like spit out a new fingerprint for these devices. So I think we're going to be running into this for a long time unless we have internet connected devices. And there are pros and cons to that. What could possibly go wrong if everything's completely dependent upon our university networks out there?
Sounds great.
I mean, they're all bulletproof. I know,
having
been in the environment, but
it's never the network.
If everything was automatically recorded, parsed for information, shipped out to the network, and came back, even confidential information, who could ever get that?
Oh yeah,
I don't see the problem at all.
I can't remember my password, so I wrote it down.
Look, I'm having a hard time with this. This Zoom already does this. They already have good, because I just thought, that the special processing on Zoom was hot garbage from the get-go, and I haven't really heard it get better. Is it still hot garbage? It's turned into dumpster fire.
It's like semi-warm garbage, but I mean, it's...
Zoom has
in comparison to who, though? I mean, there are other platforms out there that are red hot garbage. I would say,
to be fair, Zoom's like automatic filtering it is very aggressive, but it has gotten really good at narrowing in on the human voice range and eliminating noise in the background. So
it can make bad audio intelligible.
Yes, it can. A bad
define
room,
good. Right.
Say good.
High praise.
Yeah. So Larry, to your earlier question, I want to come back to that one because you kind of threw that in as like, well, if we're doing this lecture capture, it can do all these things. I want to think about those things individually. So, for example, a system that then, are we talking about some sort of AI? Whatever that means, but some sort of device, some sort of physical device, because you do need a lot of processing power for these, which is why, like, for example, the automatic camera tracking systems, they all have an outboard processor, a computer that has to live somewhere. It's usually some sort of very ugly 3 or 4 RU rack mount monstrosity that needs to sit there because there's large GPUs in there, which is doing the processing. So it's a high-end computer with, workstation class computer with multiple GPUs to look at stuff in almost real time, especially video and audio that has to process and turn out and fire right back with only a few milliseconds of delay. There's a lot that goes into that. Do we foresee those sorts of things, as general computing moves on? What's the Moore's law as transistors get, more and more dense every 18 months? Are we foreseeing that being built into some of these dedicated devices, or are we always going to be like, because I remember 15 years ago, to do lecture captures and stuff, you had to have a dedicated box out there, which was doing, and we're still at that point with a lot of these. So are we foreseeing that, every manufacturer, I'm going to buy this thing, and if you want the AI version, here's an extra box you have to go hide somewhere that we never show in our marketing, but it is a monster thing that has to live somewhere.
Most of the ones I've seen, like Timebolt.io, things like that, are apps that run after the fact. And I can see them being tied into your lecture capturing services as a premium feature. But I can't see an appliance because it's still you're recording real time and then uploading it. You can't do some of this stuff maybe you can at some point, but right now you can't.
I think your point, your example of in an LMS system, it as far as using AI, or really, I don't even like saying that. Using these
face
algorithms,
when you said that.
Using these algorithms, but I would love to be able to see it say, hey, you're taking your practice test, you're doing your homework. I'm noticing you're really struggling with this. Here's
We're going to slow it down for you.
Yes, but absolutely yes. And say,
take
okay,
all the big words out.
You're
that
going,
would help me a lot.
I look at your homework
Don't
and
use big words.
Is it any different than the same algorithms when Amazon says, well, I needed a box of crowns. So I went to crowns, and so now every page after that tells me how many crowns I can buy. I don't need that many damn crowns.
Crowns or crayons?
Crowns.
What are you buying?
Crowns.
Like wear on your head?
Sure. Don't you buy those?
On your teeth.
You can get some on your teeth too. You can color with them also.
We'll have a discussion later.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt the
Just
show
look it up. It's in the Kentucky.
Crowns.
It's
too
in
late.
Kentucky.
We're 3 minutes into your interruption. So
I know.
I'm just wondering why you're shopping for crowns.
Because I have a house full of girls.
That's a tiara.
Okay,
not in my house. They're all queens, and all queens wear a crown.
They're crowns.
Okay.
And they color with them too. Anyway.
Okay.
But I really do. I see that as being a useful and doable thing at this point in time. I struggle within our AV universe with these claims of we use AI because, to Chris's point, a lot of times you have to have this secret device. And even that secret device is an insanely overpowered machine, overexpensed, and it can do one. We've seen one manufacturer out there says, "Hey, you can buy this thing. It's wonderful, and it for everything on the surface, it looks like it works well for one camera, right?" And you're like, "Okay, that's an awful lot for this," and I just don't see how it's coming into our world yet. Because we're not shipping things out to supercomputers. We're not on the network. So it's really hard to... And think about this. I walk into a room I wanted to set up just because I walked in. Well, this is Jamie. Well, how do we do that? Oh, we're going to have facial recognition. Wait a minute. Time out. I won't give you my cell phone number, but go ahead and take a picture of my mug and have it out there, my body shape, everything in order for it to be smart. So I see this as quickly running into some brick walls. It's intriguing, but I guess I'm tired and I'm frustrated with the AI everywhere. It's just
I just want to know, why can't we take a picture of your face, but then you're going to walk over and push the lecture capture button on the touch panel?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm not going to, because it's going to know.
Also,
it's going to know.
I think there are a lot of conversations about AI, and we're fascinated by AI. And then when you boil it down, well, what do you want it to do? Well, we want it to track a person around that's walking in front of my classroom. You don't need an AI for that. You just need a more intelligent solution than what you have right now. And routinely, people seem to think that this AI, whatever it may be and whatever iteration, will be some kind of second coming of AV, and I just don't see it. I see generational improvements, and I can definitely see, if we chat about like the Chat GTPs of the world, I can see that applying a lot. But when you boil it down, what other things do we want to see? Larry, you made a great point. Like, if there is an AI to synthesize a classroom session so that the recording isn't an hour and a half long, it's 40 minutes of actually the guts and the core of what we're doing, elegantly stitched together, and removing all the, let's say, lowbrow questions or terrible questions that people, I would be fascinated by an AI that could create a compressed core of what a classroom is doing. I would be excited about that. But then we get into these other things like camera tracking when they say it's AI, and it's just, I'm more interested in biometrics. If there was a way to track human skeletal structure, to track humans, that's the technology I would like to see. But I don't think it has to be AI, but I think we've also come into the marketing world that is like, just slap an AI sticker on there and you've got my attention.
Marketing needs something to do. They're going to call everything AI. And that's just why we hear this.
We've seen some of that. I mean, look to the ceiling mic thing, right? For years, we put in these analog mics. Yet you guys took them out of your rooms, so I had to hide them in other places so I could hear you. But we had the analog choir mics, that we put in these classrooms, and then all of a sudden, we beam forming. Well, that did make an improvement. And some people are calling that AI. AI made it. Well, kinda. It's a really fancy algorithm that does auto mixing and all the other. I mean, we can do that with the other way, but it's hard, and you made it in a nice little package. These things are making improvements. Look, some of the tracking cameras, they are doing okay. I would never depend on them, and they're more of a headache than anything. But when they work, I'm pretty amazed sometimes. Like, hey, that's pretty slick. Some of the stuff, but it's just really difficult for me to run on this AI bandwagon. But I like.
Do you have faculty that are begging you for camera tracking? Because I never had one faculty member ever say, "Gee, I wish there." Let me rephrase that. I would have one or two that would say, like, I want somebody in here kind of tracking me around in a high, like a production value. But I have yet to have anyone say, I want my camera in room tracking me all day long or walking around.
I actually have, but unfortunately the ones that really want it are the active learning instructors in spaces that it simply does not work. Like I have a couple of rooms on campus where there's a stage, and in there it works fabulous, and I'm leaving it in there because it works well. We have good lighting, we have an uninterrupted area for the instructor, and it works great. But the rest of the rooms,
same.
But you said the magic word is stage. Yeah. Like you had a defined location where when people walk onto this space, do a thing where classrooms are so dynamic.
Yeah, I more because of marketing than anything else. Yes, look. I mean,
well, or to Justin's earlier comment, do they think they want it?
Yes.
But then they get it and they're like, holy shit.
Or is it up to us to kind of translate that into something that is useful? Because I get it. If the shot of a room, let's say an active learning room, or maybe it's just an auditorium, is a static shot, medium shot of the room, and the person's walking back and forth in the front, is that of any value versus something that would be a little more involved, but that those tracking systems, they lock in on your face or your body or whatever, and they just, they're walking around. And I know there's people right now yelling at their car stereos that that's not how ours works. It works fine. And we said it, great. You're probably at some school where they have, professional school, and there's like an entire team of people who do like video production. Quiet. You guys can sit down because you're not speaking for all of us.
Yeah. I find it's like all the time active microphones for the classroom. We want it all the time active. We want it to be just like you were here. And then all of a sudden they realize,
you give it to them and they're like, oh, wait, we didn't want that because now everything goes out to the world.
Not really
Turn that
we
off.
didn't know that everything could be heard in here. That's what you freaking asked for.
And you're
like, what the hell?
We always...
But I'll just say, like, it would be fascinating to get, like, let's approach Panopto and say, give us some metrics. How many times do people actually click on the video to make it full screen? And I would imagine it's not often.
Oh.
I would imagine they're looking at a PowerPoint, they're looking at some kind of a document camera of some sort, or whatever else is out there. But I generally speaking, they just wanted to see if they can get like general hand gestures and kind of a subtle, they're fine. And we had we would zoom in enough, and sometimes they would walk out of frame, and I never got an email saying, gee, they walked out of frame for a minute and destroyed the entire session. So
now I was only seeing the front of the room, and there was a mysterious voice off screen. I started freaking out. I logged out of my computer.
My final because
I failed my exam. I don't know what's going on.
That's why I didn't submit any of my paperwork this year, because I was terrified. But I just see there are a lot of situations where technology they're trying to fix a problem that isn't in huge demand. And I'm fascinated because I've gone into a lot of classrooms with this camera technology, and it's just turned off. And it's because, like we said earlier, I don't like this camera tracking. It doesn't do it the way I would want it to be done, and just turn it off. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I will say,
could you add some buttons so that I could move the camera around? And it's like, we've been doing that for 20 years.
Well, in spaces where I deploy, the auto framing or auto tracking, and I will say I don't do any auto tracking, I do auto framing or auto preset recalls depending on location. But in spaces where I do that, I always do give them the button to turn it off. And just like, hey, you can turn it off. And I'm not going to, I rarely give people transport controls anymore. It's just like, here's your 5 presets, you do what you want, sort of thing. But yeah, because sometimes there are people who just like, well, I'm not comfortable with that thing in the back of the room or the 2 over here just constantly doing this. I don't want to see that. So I'm just going to hit that off button and I'm happy. So I did have some other thoughts, but Jamie, go ahead.
Yeah, I would be interested in it, not from the end user aspect, but from our aspect of having designs, having equipment that is intelligent enough to fix itself. That's a really dumbed down version of it. But I mean, if a video route goes wonky, right? If we're all AV over IP, can I use this other thing? Hey, we almost have networks that are doing it now with the redundancies of fibers, and says, oh, well, that fiber was cut outside the building. We automatically switched into this other one that's on the other side of the building. And I think it would be interesting if we could get to a point where this is crazy. This ubiquitous world where all of our equipment was able to work together and collaborate with each other and find alternative routes. And yeah, I know. Pipe dreams, right? No?
Not gonna. No.
That's not good.
But I think it's interesting me. It intrigues me.
Jamie.
It intrigues me that could we have systems that were able to set themselves, that were able to move themselves, reroute itself.
What would you do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
I built the system. I don't have to worry about it.
Watch your systems?
Somebody still has to have a ladder.
I would say one of the things I would love to see an AI do is, like, if I could deploy it in a university that is connected to a network so that it could monitor all of my equipment and intelligently communicate in a more meaningful way. Like, hey, this is a non-critical thing that you should look into, or blast it out like the projector's clearly offline or has been missing for a little while. You might want to call security.
Transistor 3 on device 2 is about to blow.
Right, like exit the spacecraft because you need to check the communication system. Okay, anyway, but
you guys have
if there was a way to have some intelligence built into some of that diagnostic in just a more meaningful, approachable way, would be just a game changer within the higher education AV segment, specifically because that's probably not something a lot of universities do well. There's like everyone keeps saying monitoring, but rarely do I interact with universities, and I'll throw my past 3 universities into that mix as well. We did not have an amazing way to monitor every single piece of equipment and to prioritize some of that equipment as well. Like, if the Blu-ray player goes off in a room, yeah, I want to know about it, but I'm not sending a truck
but
to
I'm
the
not
middle
getting
of
out of
nowhere
my chair to deal with it.
I'm not going to respond to a problem.
I'm going to close
Right,
that
and
ticket.
people want to
And
collect
now we
metrics
know
and data
why
from.
you're not in higher ed anymore.
Yeah.
You wouldn't
got
fix
booted
the
out.
Blu-ray player.
And people want to collect
Oh,
metrics and
Richard
data from
broken
this, but
Blu-rays.
that's just step one, right? What are you going to do with the metrics? What's your goals with the metrics? How are you going to apply those metrics? And
Justin,
what
that's somebody
changes
else's
you're
problem.
going to
I'm just got metrics.
I mean,
You have to analyze and synthesize.
Metrics is a lot of work, you know.
But I can make
So
a graph.
With the AI.
I want to bring up this
AI
pie
will do it.
graph,
Make
a
them
pie
do it.
chart.
and I think we're all on the same page here. I want to bring up this concept that what we think of as, let me rephrase, what the marketing folks will tell us is AI. What we want to think of as AI is really just automations. And what we're looking for are, and excuse the phrasing here, but automatic automations, things that will
Learn.
Yes, it will. For example, and I wrote down a couple of them here, like the learning patterns and mannerisms. Why can't we have a system that, for example, knows, and this doesn't require any monitoring, any of that stuff to, of camera tracking, face tracking, any of that stuff, to say like, I know at 9 a.m. on Tuesdays, the same operation happens where somebody comes in, they hit system on and they hit Blu-ray every time. Well, why don't I just automatically do that? Things like that would be relatively easy patterns, I would think, to start to pick up on. It's not sexy. It's not, flashy. It would happen in the background and be invisible.
I think that's
probably
that supercomputer we need, Chris.
I don't think it would even require
classroom.
that, honestly. I don't think we're looking at a whole lot of processing power to do that. So I think learning those use cases is where I foresee being some real interest here. I would love to see, for example, a control system that looks at let's just say touch panel, looks at your touch panel layouts, and it knows that 3 of the buttons, and I'll just say, Blu-ray, wireless sharing, and dock cam, no one ever pushes those. So after like 30 days of no one ever pushing them, they get minimized and off to the side or something. Why not? Why do they have to stay there for 7 years as the same little 1.5 inch size button when no one ever pushes them? And for those of us who have metrics, we go look at the Blu-ray option, the dock cam option, and it's used like 3% of the time. So for those 3%ers, can I shove that off to the side and give them like here's the 2 you want, and then for those 3% people, here's the other menu or whatever. Why can't a control system learn that and do that almost automatically to say like, hey, we recommend minimizing these buttons and putting them down in the bottom corner or something?
You know the answer, Chris. It's because AI doesn't exist yet.
I would, but that level of automation, I think, has more value to me than like, look how accurate I can track somebody's face in a classroom. I mean, I've seen examples, and it was interesting to play with. I've seen examples from a manufacturer. You have to have a dedicated processor, of course, to do camera tracking where it learns the face. And then when multiple people are up front on that stage area, it knows who is more important than the other. Always follow this person or this person, not these people, because it was learning the face. And they would always do a demo where one person would go stand in front of the other and kind of block their face and then step out of frame, and the camera would kind of track. So it was an interesting demo, but I'm thinking, what's the use case of that? What's the real world application of something like that? Because that's very, very niche. It's cool,
here's the
but
use
it's
case
niche.
is so that AI, you can make AI learn who's important and who the peasants are. You just ignore the peasants, right?
So when
Justin,
that
that's not an appropriate
instructor,
term. We call them students.
So when that instructor is in a Zoom or a Teams call and their face is on the screen, what does it do?
Have you seen those, the auto tracking that gets confused by Zoom? I love it.
I've had rooms where that happens. It's like,
Well, it's going to learn that it doesn't need to zoom into the projected image. So it's going to learn on its own because it's true AI, right?
I think there's going to be definitely some pushback with certain AIs or machine learning that is going to happen because as I have become acutely aware, if it is measured, it is managed. Mm-hmm. And I think we are going to be entering into this fascinating new world where you can have conversations that are happening in a classroom and you will be able to get a number associated with a wide variety of things. And I don't see faculty being at all interested in being graded on anything. I can see it happening. I mean, it's happening to us now, where Microsoft Teams can spit out a number associated with your attentiveness on meetings. Are you paying attention? Are you not paying attention? Are you doing something else? I think there will be pushback in a wide range of ways with some of this technology, or it's going to get to a point where people are just very uncomfortable. I remember when everyone was having glasses with cameras in it, and good for the people that bought those. I didn't want to be around them, and I didn't feel comfortable. And I think we're going to hit this point where it is uncomfortable being in spaces where you might be graded or might be measured in some specific way. And, I'm just not convinced that we will accept a lot of this at face value. I think there's going to be pushback. I think there's an elegant way that you can kind of approach it. But it'll be fascinating to see how corporations embrace that or don't embrace it.
I'll say it again, kind of to your point, Richard. Be careful what you wish for.
I would like to make one more play for probably basic AI automation stuff, which seems really simple. So why someone doesn't do it, and if they do, please write in, let me know. One of my personal pet peeves: digital signage, where someone works up a graphic, they work up a video, do whatever for an event coming up, and that event was 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, or 2 months ago, and that thing is still in circulation. So most of these graphics can now be scanned. So why can't something look at that and say, this says August? I'm going to automatically bypass that in the queue. Seems very straightforward, and I would love to see some sort of feature like that, because I'm notorious for booby trapping digital signage. We can get into that later, but you walk past these digital signage displays, and you've got stuff going on for like, hey, back to school, blah blah blah. I'm like, it's middle of October. Why is that still up there?
Purge feature that needs to be enabled.
Yes, the AI purge. That's what we want.
Yeah.
Wait, not that. That's something else. That's another movie. So.
But do you think that we're going to hit a point where, I can walk up to, an AI and say, program a touch panel that has 5 buttons, put the date and time on the top, because that's critically important. Nobody has a watch
Don't put date
anymore.
and time on touch panels.
You've got to have it, and then set it to be 3 days off in the, some wrong time zone.
I put the clock on there, and I always set it 3 minutes fast because it drives people nuts.
Perfect. But, will we approach that? And to be honest, ChatGTP can already do a lot. Like, it is scary and impressive all at the same time. If I ask it to write a Python piece of code to do a specific thing, it spits something out, and sometimes it even works. So I can see in the not so distant future those like iterative kind of AIs that can take something and keep working on it toward. I think there may be a future where you do get that thing that you want, where it manipulates in real time what is happening on these touch panels, and it doesn't have to be all that far away. But these technologies, it will be interesting to see where we are when technicians don't understand how to troubleshoot anything more, because it is this black box that they have created.
Now you're talking Justin's language.
There it is.
And it's going to be this gap where they don't understand what's wrong.
Yes.
And they're not going to be able to fix it because
the easy button.
The engine of your car or the batteries of your car don't make any sense to you because it's encapsulated in something that you no longer have access to.
And Justin, we'll let you bring that up in a second here. But to be fair, Richard, there's a lot of people out there in this kind of industry who don't know what they're doing anyway. So, is that really all that different?
Are you talking about me?
I think that's it. But the problem, I mean, honestly, I would say in higher ed, 7 to 12 years ago, there were very few people that really understood how things worked under the hood. And just within the last, I would say 5 to 6 years, have we seen this like explosion of people that are engineering level individuals entering into higher education, and they understand things as well as some of the manufacturers and integrators do. Yeah. And, it just now we've gotten to that point where there is that technical expertise, but it's not universal. And some people, they still have a black box sitting in their campus classroom right now. I can't imagine us even accelerating further beyond that, where not only do they not understand how it's working, but they won't be able to make adjustments. So.
Well, I mean, it's easy. You just unplug it from the wall, and plug it back in and then walk away and everything goes back to the way it was.
I thought you were going to say this is a ploy by the manufacturers to reestablish that hierarchy and say, we will now sell you a box that lives in your rack that you still don't know what it does.
Oh, I think that's a little bit of that. I mean, look at the car manufacturers. They didn't want people working on their own cars, so let's make this shit as complex as possible so that when it breaks, they bring it back to us.
But our company makes some devices that, you plug in the mics, you plug in some speakers, you hit a button and it tunes the room. We didn't come up with that to block people out. We did it because there weren't enough people that could do this type of work. When there was 400 rooms to auto-tune and you've got a small integrator of 5 to 7 people, there's just not enough hours in the days to properly tune a lot of these things. So I think that's where automation makes a lot of sense.
I get it. But when everything breaks, they're calling you and going, I don't know, I hit the easy button. Tell me what I did, Richard.
But you need to hit the easy button again.
Push it again.
I mean,
that's not a fix.
But
that's not a fix.
Also,
come on.
But we also do not still drive in horse-drawn wagons every day. Some people do, but the technology moves beyond what we used to do, and now I think some of these technologies can be automated, and it's not such a big lift. But a lot of our products, do the easy button. Oh, you don't want the easy button anymore? Then do it manual. Great, do it the way that you want to do.
You just need a hard button next to it.
Right, like you have to unpress.
I just think it's important, when you hit an easy button, whatever it is, you somewhat understand what's happening under the hood, right? I mean, like you don't have to exactly explain the whole engine itself, but you just need to grasp essentially how an engine sort of works.
Nope.
Because when everything falls apart, you need to be able. Jamie doesn't agree.
I don't either.
Jamie thinks that you don't need to know anything about your equipment.
I need to focus on other things, so I want that easy button to take care of its thing.
Like managing students.
There are certain everyday activities that I just don't care. Hit the easy button. And if it sounds like shit, then I'll go in and fix it later. But if I want to deploy somebody and I want to get it done quickly,
how to fix it. You'll go fix it later. You're missing my point.
I only need one person that knows how to fix it. I need 12 that'll press the damn easy button and get something that's passable. It's just like your TVs.
Some universities don't have anybody that knows what's happening under the hood. You just said you need one person, which goes back to my point. You should have at least some resources that know what's happening under the hood. If you have no one and you're going around the university and pressing all these easy buttons, good luck.
Well, I would say that goes back to just general understanding of like acoustics.
Exactly.
I mean, if you don't have a fundamental understanding of acoustics and you're in charge of them,
that's exactly my point. Is you need to have fundamental knowledge of this stuff.
But no.
People are getting hired from the help desk and saying, "Go press the easy button."
I think you can. Yes, but I think in some cases the easy button is still better than not running it at all. And there are a lot of assumptions. Like I drive cars every single freaking day. I put it in drive and I drive.
What's that like?
Right? How many people today cannot even figure out how to shift a manual transmission? They get in the car and they put it in drive and it goes.
Right.
And great.
What happens when the car breaks down?
95% of the time, who cares? The other 5%, you hire somebody. Now, in this case,
how do you even hire that person? Right. I'm talking about you have no understanding or knowledge. Like you don't even know who to call. You hire that person.
Justin, I do want to point out, you're not wrong, but I do want to point out there are integrators out there charging good money for people who don't know how to balance audio in a room.
Exactly.
And you get it delivered. But to your point, though, they went in under the hood and they made the worst layout you have ever seen in the worst sounding room you've ever heard.
Because they sort of knew what they were doing, but they didn't know exactly
No, they didn't
how
at
to
all,
do it.
and yet they charge people who knew even less. So that happens a lot. So there is a place for an easy button in a basic scenario, and I foresee more and more of that showing up. So,
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying we as AV professionals need to know AV.
Sure.
That's all
I
I'm
don't
saying.
disagree at all. But well, let's take a quick break, come back, and we'll yell about facility stuff and people who have already broken our things. And we'll let Richard put on his
people
other
who
hat
don't
for
know what
being
we're
a
doing
university
is
person.
facilities.
All right. Push this one to make sure my levels are turned up this time. See, now they're back where they should be.
There's a great new digital magazine from Higher Ed AV Media found at higheredav.com, and we do a special monthly show where we actually stay on topic. It's a show where we try to really focus on a single topic and break it down into AV SuperFriends style. That's AV SuperFriends on topic, found at avsuperfriends.com, higheredav.com, iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and wherever else you get your podcast from.
So, speaking of people who have trouble with things, and I'm not saying the facilities guys, but I'm thinking the people who hired the facilities guys to come in and do some work. I'm curious from all of you, and Richard, again, let you put on your university employee hat. You can go back in time. When you get called into a space or some department asks you to, hey, take a look at this space we've already got. So you're inheriting this. The minute you touch it, the minute you modify, the minute you change whatever, you now own it because, well, the IT guys were here, so I got to call them now. And a space is just terrible. There's cables across the floor. Someone snuck a power cable through a wall, whatever it is. Are we comfortable walking away from that or telling them this is going to cost you way more than you think because you need to fix all of this? Or, I mean, what's our approach? Because it happens all the time.
I would just say, my approach always was I would go in and throw them a hard number right out of the gate. Like ballpark,
7.
back of the envelope.
Oh.
We're talking $12,000 for your small conference room that you said you needed X, Y, and Z, and I'm kind of back. And if there is an immediate, whoa, we were expecting $300, it was like, that is not what we do. We build robust, managed, supported locations, and we are on the hook for these to operate all the time. And we have specifications. And when the moment they start saying, yeah, but we heard that you could, get a system. No. These are the systems that we have. Here's the grocery list. We're happy to work with you a little bit. But the moment we would get kickback, we would stop and, slowly walk away from that, any of the technology. In fact, we wouldn't even look up in the ceiling. Don't engage. Don't engage because the moment you pop a ceiling tile,
Don't even look in there. Get out of there.
If you open the AV cabinet door, you have just purchased, or you are in charge of 100% of that forever at 0%. So we were very upfront, and routinely we would get kickback of, well, we thought we have $3,000, and well, what that would get you is X, Y, and Z that we would support. So I was very focused on, you are not just buying hardware, you are buying 3 things. You are buying hardware, you're buying a solution that is managed, and you are buying support along with that. And these are 3 pillars that we offer. But the moment it got transactional, we were in trouble. We had to make it transformational. Like, we are going to transform this space. We are going to support it. You are paying for a phone number that you can call, and you get, white glove treatment of somebody will eventually respond. Again, I got kicked out of university because, don't call us about that. Yeah, Blu-ray. But, signing SLAs and having expectations, it took, some of the people never understood it. And it was always, well, Best Buy has, or Costco has. And I would say, absolutely, you should feel comfortable using your funds to do whatever you want. But that is not the service that we provide. We are very similar to the networking people, asterisk. But you don't go out and buy any switch that you want. You are getting a managed solution at an enterprise level, not the Best Buy special of the week, because those were the heated conversations that we would get in. Yep. Our standard classroom was $14,000 for a very basic audio, basic video capture.
You got Kentucky prices.
You get like a megaphone and a candle on a whiteboard? Or
a plastic horn and a big piece of wax that you would rotate to capture the audio. But we would have these kind of packages, and we called them classroom in a box. And hey, this classroom in a box version B is $25,000. It's got a Panopto device in it. It's got it's got the mics. And the moment they started value engineering our designs, we were like, we would be happy to deploy a design that you've come up with. And routinely it was like, well, we don't know anything about this AV stuff. And it's like, that's why we're here, and that's why it costs $25,000 for this design or that design based on what you just told me. So unfortunately, you've got to be a little cagey and be a little aggressive in terms of what you do well and what you don't do well, in the moment that they value engineer you into that dangerous space of supporting hot garbage, like, oh, this display is only intended to run 4 hours a day or whatever, and you want it to run 24/7 for your digital signage. No, we're just not going to do it.
But
feel free to try
Android
installing
TV
it yourself.
built in. You can watch Netflix on it.
Version 4, so it's rock solid, I'm sure. So it was a challenge. That was probably the most challenging space, especially for groups within the university that did not have a lot of funds, and you wanted to help them out. And it's like, but we would help them out by saying, we've got an old processor that is a legitimately manufactured device that we could bring in, but when it fails, you're going to have to be comfortable with it failing, and that's going to be part of the SLA. Is, hey, this is a run to failure room. Let's categorize it as to what it is. And when it fails, I'm going to pull out this sheet and says, we've got 2 weeks and we're going to bill you for whatever we can come up with next.
That's the only room types we have, run to fail.
RTF, run to failure, was my favorite classrooms. The eBay specials. Nobody wanted it. But just like networking, I would never ask networking, hey, I found this thing on the internet.
I bought my own access point. I'm just going to plug it in.
Seems fine to me.
Works fine at my house.
I enjoyed some of those conversations when they would be like, oh, but Best Buy 600. And I was like, absolutely. I've got a Best Buy 600 in my house. I can't install that in these spaces because it is not intended for this use. And it again, did people go out and buy an Epson projector? I'm using air quotes because yes, technically it was Epson. Yes, it was a 1100 lumens based on maybe they had it near the sun so that it would kind of lift it. I don't know.
It was but Epson, salt.
Right. Technically it was manufactured by the company, but it was not the Epsons that we installed or supported. And we were able to, having those conversations where what happens when this fails. We can't drive to Best Buy and go get another one. It won't be there, one. And two, it's going to fail in a short order. But if ours fails, I'm going to pull one off a shelf, come over here and swap it out in hours, if not minutes. And that's a huge selling point to somebody. But if they're stuck in that RTF, run to failure kind of mindset, let them go and do that and just step back. Sorry, I'm going to get off my soapbox, but that was one of the most challenging things I interacted with, was giving somebody the design that they asked for, them saying this is too expensive, and for them to start selectively value engineering my design was just bad. They're cutting bone and leaving fat, and it's like it needs to be the other way around for consistency and support and all these other reasons. And some of them immediately got it, and they were like, we trust you. Can we reduce the price by doing maybe a lower end projector that you support? Yeah, we can do that. And maybe we're going to be outside of the AVIXA approved zone, but that's a better conversation to have than we're just going to go and put that Chinese thing and connect it right to the network, assign it an IP address. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. We run into a lot of the we want this whatever Amazon special is this week, like you were saying, and we want you to hang it. Sorry, anything that gets attached to structure, that's the hard line. I don't care what you buy and set on the table. I'm not supporting it. I'm not replacing it, to your point. But it's gotten to a point in our society that, especially in our area, that permits are serious now. Electricians are serious now. And if it gets attached to structure, we're only doing it the right way. And they're like, well, we'll just run an extension cord because we don't want to call facilities. No, you're going to get an electrician or this isn't going. And that has been my biggest argument recently, is that, we don't want to involve facilities. Well, then this is a no start, because we're not doing electricity, and you're not breaking the law because I have to own it. The second that I allow you to put your Chinese special on the wall, and you ran an extension cord from the next room over, that means I approved it, and I'm not listening to it. I'm not hearing it when it catches fire. It's not me.
So we've all had these conversations, and that next step, Jamie, what's that next step? So I'm seeing some new trends on our campus, and I hope somebody, maybe an inspector or maybe our fire marshal, is listening to this podcast, because I've now had people admit to me that IT and electricians are too expensive. So now faculty are installing their own projectors and installing their own electricity by running extension cables above ceilings. And they're saving a crap ton of money by doing it. And no one's regulating this.
I was going to say, just call the building inspector, and they'll red flag the room. So.
Oh yeah. So we're collecting some of these rooms, and we're gonna try to figure out who do we report this stuff to? Who's the enforcer, right? And who
Justin, you know the answer to this.
State inspectors, right?
It's the AHJ.
Yeah, I know. AHJ, but there's a few of them. And do we want, hand slapped, or do we want fines happening? So that's a new trend of people saving cost. Be aware, if you start saying no in that manner, we can't run extension cables. We don't have the money to do this project. Okay, fine. You leave, and then you come back in a year and it's done by the faculty themselves. It's a new trend.
Larry,
Watch
you've
out for
been wiggling. What's your take on this?
Oh, it's the only thing I was going to say is that run to failure as a strategy is something I hadn't considered before, and I'm actually interested in that. I might have to start rolling some of that out.
That?
I do it all the time.
Bowling Green, man, it's everywhere here.
I do it all the time. I like to rescue low income departments. Be like, look, I've got this 2-year-old machine I just took out of this other room.
Yeah.
It may run you 6 months, it may run you 4 years. I don't care, but it's yours.
Sold.
Just don't call me when it breaks. Just throw it away.
I mean, I've done that, but I've never had that as a documented run to failure strategy out there, and I like it.
Oh, yeah. That's the standard for classrooms that's slightly below your bottom standard.
Again, you just got that idea from the guy that was run out of higher ed. Just.
But I the run to failure, it worked in certain environments. When you have good products that are in there,
something is better than nothing. That's really what we're talking about.
Is it though?
Is it?
Sometimes, not always.
If they're not going to properly fund you, then what are you going to do? And it's better to have it documented that, hey, if you're not going to fund us, you have put me in a situation that has defined a new type of classroom that we have, which is run to failure. And the expectation is when it fails, I'm going to be on my hands and knees begging for some money. And hopefully there's some money to be had. Otherwise, the room's just going to be broken forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right. And, so to your point, Chris, sour milk is worse than having no milk, right? So I've got some milk and it's really bad. Going back to your
This is the worst analogy ever.
What just happened here?
Man, no.
Today on Milk Talk.
My headphones aren't working. What?
No.
All right. Any last thoughts? So, Richard, I do like your idea of making sure that's clearly delineated in the SLA. That's clever, and I want to go update all my stuff for that too. So
yeah, exactly.
Any last thoughts on these tough spaces? So we can roll out of here, and Larry can disappear to where he has to get to.
I would just say, I think a lot of the folks working in higher education are so much more similar than they think they are, and from what you would consider the top universities all the way down to the least funded universities, they're all experiencing the same problems and challenges. So work together.
And there you have it. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, everybody. Well, we've managed to ruin yet another episode of AV Super Friends Off the Rails. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. If you complain loud enough, we might just invite you on the show.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV Super Friends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.